Welcome to Traumatic Brain Injury Part 1. Please adjust your speakers and advance to the next slide. Over 1.7 million people per year are diagnosed with traumatic brain injury. The very young, children birth to age 4, and the elderly are the highest risk groups. 28% of all TBI are caused by falls, 20% by traffic accidents, 19% by impact injuries, and 11% are the result of assaults. In order to understand TBI, it's important to understand the structures of the brain. Beginning on the lower left-hand side, we see the occipital lobe. This is where your vision centers are in your brain. Right above that, the parietal lobe controls motor movement with your arms and your legs. On the lower right side, we have the temporal lobe, which contains your speech and language centers. And on the upper right, the frontal lobe, which contains your higher abilities to think, reason, and understand. The human brain is not a static organ, but it is constantly changing, and this is good news for individuals who have suffered traumatic brain injury. The brain can grow new connections and route around any kind of brain injury given the proper circumstances and depending on the damage done in the initial injury. These brain connections can be thought of as a riverbed. The more often they are used, the wider and deeper and stronger they get. If they're used less often, they become weaker, less connected, and eventually weeds grow in the river and the connection is lost. Scientists call this ability to grow new connections in the brain plasticity, and the science of brain plasticity is the study of how individuals grow those new connections. If you will reach up and put your hand on your forehead, that is the frontal lobe of your brain, and centered in the frontal lobe is something called executive function. As you can see from the list, a number of things are tied in to a person's executive function within the frontal lobes of their brain. Planning, attention, memory, the ability to control inhibitions, starting and watching their activities, problem solving, and what's called cognitive flexibility. As you can imagine, all of these are very important, not only in life, but in school as well. Wikipedia gives a very good explanation of executive function. Take a few moments to look at this, and when you are finished, advance to the next slide. Keep in mind that the frontal lobes of children are not fully developed until after puberty. That means the executive function of children is also not completely developed until after puberty. And that means that the ability to train the brain through rehabilitative services and proper education can really help a child recover from a brain injury. Children with traumatic brain injury exhibit three broad areas of symptoms. The first is in their cognitive functioning, the second is in their behavioral and psychosocial functioning, and the third is in their physical functioning. We will go over each of those areas over the next several slides. Among the cognitive functions that can impact children with traumatic brain injury are attention, the ability to pay attention for extended periods of time, the ability to concentrate on a given topic for an extended period of time. The process of learning and memorizing information can be impacted by TBI, as well as skills in oral language. Processing speed, the ability to take information in and understand it, is also affected by TBI, and children with traumatic brain injury can have altered perceptions of time. Here's how you can help a child with traumatic brain injury. Probably the most important thing you can do is give them the gift of time. Allow extra time to complete tasks. Tied into that, they may need more frequent rest breaks, and make sure you don't overload them with information. Finally, help taking notes might be a good idea, or perhaps give them a copy of your notes. Part 2 of this series will have more specific information on how you can help a child with traumatic brain injury in the area of cognitive functioning. The second major area of symptoms in traumatic brain injury is behavioral. Children with TBI may exhibit anger, irritability, or depression. Information on how to work with those issues will be in a subsequent edition of this series. A third major area of symptoms in traumatic brain injury is the physical area. Children with TBI may suffer from seizures, balance and coordination problems, dizziness, frequent fatigue, and sensory problems. It is also interesting to note that people with TBI may produce lower levels of melatonin and thereby have trouble sleeping at night, which may contribute to this. More information on this area will be in a subsequent edition of this series. Thank you for viewing this presentation. You may want to jot down a few of your ideas for use in future sessions. If you would like more information about this or other topics, please contact me.